Park Kayu's face was expressionless as he stared gravely at the computer screen. He saw 72 likes on his post. Park Kayu reflected on the photo he'd uploaded and inwardly marveled that it had drawn so much interaction after a long time. Thanks to it, he'd gained quite a few views and some comments. Then suddenly he scrolled across something that puzzled him and blurted, "What the hell? Why is something like this trending again? Defender's killing post." Park Kayu scrolled the site for more. Who did he kill this time? He saw the post displayed. Confirmed killed 36 people. This time not humans but monster corpses. Park Kayu's hand froze on the keyboard as if he'd realized something. Then he compared this post with his own and suddenly recognized that the scene and the timing couldn't be a coincidence. Park Kayu only now discovered that we were at the same place. And then he received a message from Defender. Though he didn't understand, he opened it and saw Defender wrote, "Hey Skeleton." His brow tightened when he read the content. Defender sent a photo and asked, "Hey Skeleton, is this you?" Park Kayu looked at the line, "Is this you?" for a moment but did not reply. His gaze cold and calculating. According to the post he just uploaded, Defender said he lived near Guangzhou. So we must have accidentally crossed paths during the evacuation. For now just deny it, and that'll do. On the computer screen Da Jiang's suspicious message to Park Kayu appeared. "No," she chuckled softly. "Interesting." Then Da Jiang's hand glided lightly over the keyboard and sent a message to Park Kayu. "I saw everything already, and yet you deny it. Thanks to your post I survived. Let's be friends from now on." Then Park Kayu remembered his earlier warning post about the approaching monster, so she had seen that post, and while he was thinking a call came in. On the radio Sue and Rebecca were observing. Park Kayu picked up and asked, "Oh Rebecca, what's up?" Her eyes turned distant and she spoke seriously. "Skeleton." She and Sue watched the crowd in the distance and reported, "Many people are heading this way." Rebecca told Park Kayu to be careful. After hanging up he propped his hand to his forehead. For now the appearance of uninvited guests was unavoidable. Gold was the name they'd given the alpha of the wild dog pack from the previous night. Because of last night's battle the pack had dwindled and weakened. Park Kayu recalled last night when the ground was littered with dead wolves, so they could no longer completely prevent refugees from returning to their shelters. Watching people dividing tasks to pitch tents and arrange supplies, Park Kayu observed carefully, yet the real problem was that he stared at the screen showing where they were, right next to the generator's ventilation pipe. Park Kayu sighed. "Why does it have to be there? The heart that keeps my bunker running." The diesel generator is Skeleton's heart. Its size fills a pit and produces a huge amount of electricity, but it also emits a lot of exhaust. Smoke issuing from a house chimney meant someone was cooking. If I start the generator and smoke appears, they'll detect my bunker. But if I shut it off and the bunker's heart stops, my home will no longer be a home. With summer coming, if the food in the freezer thaws and spoils, my future plans will be ruined. Judging by their gear, they don't seem to be a raiding party yet. Park Kayu decided to try negotiating. The old man leading the group. "Don't put things on the slope. Place important items near that tent. Finish before sunset." Park Kayu spoke from behind the old man. "This area is private property." His gaze cold. "I don't want to refuse anyone. Please leave." The old man silently looked him over. Then his eyes landed on the tool Park Kayu wore. Someone in the group said, "In this situation, whose land matters?" The old man explained, "Young man, don't worry too much. We're from the Vanguard." He held up a paper. "This is a Vanguard permit." The permit clearly stated, "Vanguard permit. Affiliated with Vanguard Unit 218, Vanguard Division 22, Vanguard Command." Park Kayu pondered. The Vanguard. He suddenly remembered a community post summarizing the Vanguard in 3 lines. 1. The government created housing for many people in big cities for urban reorganization. 2. The reorganization of housing was not real. 3. Those sent to the outskirts under the name Vanguard were mostly elderly, when the capacity to accept people and house them in ruined cities was overwhelmed. People were pushed to the outskirts under the pretext of pioneering. However, they had not yet become a band of looters. Park Kayu said in a cold, threatening tone, "I'll give you 3 days. Pack up and leave." The old man refused and tried to rush forward, but those around restrained him. "No kid, I told you, we were licensed by the government." Park Kayu had his gun ready. his hand gripping the stock tightly. He spoke bluntly. The reason people come here is that there's no housing left in the city. Yet 3 days passed and even into the next dawn they refused to leave. When Park Caillou turned, the old man finally explained, "You're surprised. You mean people can't leave until there's an order from headquarters?" The old man listed his woes. "If we leave, the rations we left in the city will be cut. Just a few more days, not weeks. Please understand us." An old woman hurried to plead and begged Park Caillou, "Please spare us, young man, I beg you. The people here are unfortunate souls, abandoned by family for old age and exiled. We are not bad people. Treat us like quiet neighbors." Park Caillou opened his hand and quietly looked at the bar the old woman shoved into his palm. Her voice trembling, she begged once more, "Please, I beg you." Park Caillou returned to his base, his shelter. It was still dark and humid. He was drenched in sweat and rubbed his forehead, wondering whether he should kill them all. He was at the limit. If they weren't looters, he didn't want to kill them. Was there no other way? Park Caillou posted online asking. "Skeleton in trouble. A group of refugees approached my place claiming to be Vanguard. Because of them I can't start the generator as it would reveal my location. They say they can't leave because of orders. What should I do?" People flooded comments. "Thought you were dead since you hadn't posted in a while. Kill them all. Vanguard are super annoying. If there are too many, take out the leader." Park Caillou was speechless seeing the comments. Then a message from Defender arrived. He opened it and read Defender's warning. "They'll soon become looters. If rations are cut, they'll kill you and steal first. If you want to live, attack them preemptively." Park Caillou sighed in exasperation. He'd guessed what they'd say, but he partially agreed. Clearly they were still in order, so he should wait a while longer. The next morning Park Caillou walked with Kyle Doss, who teased him. "Thought you were like 40 rice dumplings already. The image of skeleton in my imagination doesn't fit at all. Spending too much time on the community creates a different persona, right?" Park Caillou thought to himself that this guy was Kyle Doss, one of the ordinary Viva users. He said he'd found something interesting on the mountain days ago, so they came to check. Kyle Doss pointed a direction. "Over there." He looked at the object and asked Park Caillou what it was. Park Caillou examined it carefully and said, "A cocoon," though inside Park Caillou already knew. It was their eggs. Park Caillou remembered when he saw Kyle Doss's post about the cocoon. Did anyone know what it was? He immediately recognized it at first glance. That wasn't a marshmallow, but a monster egg. The moment he saw Kyle Doss's post, he came up with an idea. If the Vanguard couldn't leave without an order from above, then all he needed to do was give them a reason to leave. And this was the reason. So Park Caillou messaged Kyle Doss saying, "That's dangerous. Let me get rid of it for you." And now he had seen the cocoon with his own eyes. There was something even more terrifying than gold. When Kyle Doss received the message from Park Caillou, he called him an idiot, but still agreed to meet. Park Caillou felt fortunate. Thanks to the community's activities, luckily Kyle Doss wasn't too suspicious of him. The car's navigator beeped, guiding him on the optimal route. Park Caillou considered that information was outdated and meaningless now. To reach the city faster, he had called the National Road Control Headquarters. The car navigator spoke again, confirmed Skeleton's ID number. "You're an acquaintance of Commissioner Kim Daram, right? You want to take the detour out of Seoul. Follow Route 13, then Route 22. After that, continue on Route 8. Park Caillou calmly followed the instructions. The safe road was controlled by the government. This was when frequently visiting the National Committee paid off. The place Kyle Doss described was Paju, the first place a rift appeared in Korea, and the cocoon was on a mountain outside Paju. The area near the rift was protected by elite hunters and the military. But no one expected it to appear here. Park Caillou arrived, got out of the car and introduced himself. "I'm Skeleton. I'm here." Kyle Doss had been waiting, smiled faintly and waved. Park Caillou went straight to the point. "Where is it? I want to see it immediately." But inside he was pensive. The appearance of the cocoon meant the surrounding environment was being eroded by the rift. Soon this place would become uninhabitable. Park Caillou told Kyle Doss the truth, startling him. "A monster egg. Then isn't it very dangerous?" Park Caillou drew the axe hidden at his waist. "That's right. I told you it was dangerous." He rolled up his sleeves and warned Kyle Doss, "Prepare a bit of everything. If I die, take my truck and run. The keys are inside." Kyle Doss panicked. "What? Wait a second. Park Caillou was ready, face expressionless, hoping that wouldn't happen. But nothing in life was ever 100%. He dashed forward like the wind, raised his axe, gathering force to split the surface. I swung the axe with murderous intent. However, the axe suddenly stopped midair. Just before it touched the surface, I halted. An arm holding an axe appeared. Its blade pressed to Park Caillou's neck, forcing him to stop. The arm vanished. Kyle Das asked in confusion. What was that? Park Caillou calmly answered. A reflection barrier. It distorts space and reflects attacks back at the attacker. One of many reasons humans cannot attack monsters. Park Caillou reassured him. As long as it doesn't feel threatened, we don't have to worry. This made Kyle Das more nervous. Wait. Then what if it does feel threatened? Isn't there something inside that can't be controlled? Park Caillou replied coldly without hesitation. Then I'll die. Kyle Das still worried. You really fear nothing. After some time, Park Caillou secured the egg and placed it on his truck. Kyle Das was still puzzled. Are you really Skeleton? I've just met you, but you're completely different from what I imagined. Park Caillou turned to him. What were you expecting of me? Kyle Das voiced his thoughts. Honestly, in the community, you're just a weirdo. You always add strange tags, join in low-level pranks, cheer whenever someone posts inappropriate content. Park Caillou turned away embarrassed. I'm busy. I'm leaving. Kyle Das laughed. Moments like this fit. Thanks for coming. Park Caillou quipped. If you're grateful, then like my post. Kyle Das laughed and extended his hand. Fine. Park Caillou started the car and said, I was lying. Since the apocalypse, this was the first time I met an online user in real life. It felt like meeting an old friend or a cousin I was close to as a child. Park Caillou leaned his chin on the window ledge deep in thought. Thanks to the apocalypse, right? The car rolled steadily on the highway. On the way back, I dropped the cocoon a little far from the shelter. As night fell, the old man and the vanguard shone their lights on the road. Everyone wondered about the cocoon. What is that? Did it come from the rice fields? But why does it glow? Headquarters? This is Vanguard Unit 218. There's an unidentified object on the highway near the Vanguard zone. The old man's radio crackled. Then a voice shouted, Get out of there! This is Road Control Headquarters. The drone confirmed it's a monster spore. It may be active, so don't provoke it and evacuate immediately. The old man hesitated. What? But the camp? The headquarters voice snapped. No time for questions. Evacuate now. That's an order, not a suggestion. Meanwhile, Park Caillou was already back in his shelter. He sat on the floor drenched in sweat, staring at the ceiling, satisfied. A perfect performance. Thanks to the egg, his territory was peaceful again. The next morning, the Vanguard's campsite was quiet. A month later, in Park Caillou's shelter, he sat on his chair leisurely drinking coffee and praised himself. I'm doing really well. The Vanguard. Since that day, they hadn't shown up when the entrance was sealed. Members of the National Committee who occasionally contacted him with annoying requests were probably busy preparing to leave Jeju Island. Since things had been quiet lately, his mind and body were utterly at ease. If days like this could continue, he needed nothing else. That bastard defender posted another comment. On the screen was a post. The current situation in Seoul. Outside, people were shouting, Government Committee, ensure the people's safety. The crowd shouted more fiercely, ensure it, ensure it. Is your life the only thing that matters? Explain the resettlement. Explain it. Dalran entered the room urging, Director, stay away from the window. It's dangerous. Stones might be thrown. Sang-hoon pulled the window closed and spoke in a low voice. That man is still alive. Da-ran looked puzzled, not fully understanding his meaning. Lee Sang-hoon repeated with sharp eyes, I mean that man, Park Caillou. If he's alive, then contact him. Ask how long he intends to keep hiding. The legendary hunter, the professor, wants to know. Professor. Years ago, when the first rift appeared in this world, countries around the globe expressed concern about the phenomenon. But at the same time, all of them revealed their two-faced nature by trying to turn this anomaly to their advantage. Soon after, a large-scale expedition was conducted to determine the true nature of the anomaly. The explorers guided Mr. Kim, move 10 meters to the left. He obeyed. This way. After seeing him in position, the explorer nodded. That's right. Stop. Stay there. When the camera was ready, the group of explorers suddenly froze with their mouths wide open. The girl in the group stared in horror. They turned and fled. One of them pointed behind Mr. Kim and shouted, Mr. Kim, move. He turned his head in confusion. What? Before he could react, a sharp object sliced across his neck. Blood splattered everywhere. The monster spared no one, using its tentacles to catch and kill the others. However, this only caused the monsters to appear sooner, and humanity, having let down its guard, suffered heavy casualties. Only then did the nations realize the seriousness of the problem, and to fight against the monsters they began training a new military unit, the Hunters. One morning at a prestigious school in the city, Park Caillou recalled, I was among those in Class 13 of Guard, the professional hunter training facility. On the school bulletin board the exam results were posted. Everyone murmured, Park Caillou again. For 3 years straight he's always ranked first in the whole school. All he thinks about is killing monsters. He does nothing but train except when he sleeps. Another voice chimed in. I heard he even trains in his sleep. Everyone gossiped about Park Caillou. Incredible. While he stood silently among their chatter, Park Caillou walked away, leaving Sang-hoon behind. Back to the present. He was browsing the web when the radio buzzed. Park Caillou was puzzled because the caller was Kim Da-ran. He sighed, guessing silently. Asking me to help stop the protests in Seoul, right? Park Caillou answered. What is it? On the other end Sang-hoon spoke. The cocoon on Route 13. Park Caillou's brows furrowed hearing his voice. Sang-hoon continued. You're the one who placed it there, aren't you, Park Caillou? Park Caillou recalled Sang-hoon's faint figure from before. He was silent for a while, scratching his head. How did you know? Sang-hoon analyzed. If a cocoon suddenly appeared in an area not yet eroded, the culprit must be someone nearby, right? Hearing that analysis Park Caillou felt helpless. That stiff tone was the same as ever. Sang-hoon reproached. Why did you do that? What if a monster was summoned when the cocoon opened? Park Caillou probed. Summoned. Monster cocoons can summon monsters. Sang-hoon snapped. It's not really an egg. The cocoon was identified as a temporary gate. Park Caillou only replied with 2 words. Is that so? Inside he blamed himself. I've been retired for quite a while. But realizing I was blatantly deceived still stings. Sang-hoon said seriously. Park Caillou, I'll get straight to the point. Come to Jeju Island. Park Caillou heard the proposal. His expression unchanged. He replied, what if I refuse? Sang-hoon tried to persuade him. There's an open instructor position. I'll recommend you. But Park Caillou refused. I'm not going anywhere. I like it here. Sang-hoon pressed. Do you think there's a future in a place like that? Or are you still stuck in your inferiority complex? We can't do anything anyway, right? Neither you nor I have any talent. At this Park Caillou still refused. I have no talent. Enough small talk. I'm not going. Find someone else. Sang-hoon was speechless, still as stubborn as ever, never listening. The urban area will soon be in danger. Sang-hoon's last words before hanging up. Survive, Park Caillou. Though the call ended, Park Caillou still stared at the radio screen. He sat dazed in his shelter. The next morning in a rice field, sunlight shone on the sickle in Park Caillou's hand. He harvested each stalk of rice and placed it in the sack he had prepared, his heart unchanged. It had been 1 year and 11 months since the war began. I sowed rice seeds in an abandoned field and many stalks grew naturally. Park Caillou slung the sack of rice stalks over his shoulder. He remembered old Kim's words. With just these rice grains and a hoe, we can cook even in hardship. So never underestimate a tiny grain of rice. Thanks to his advice I could eat fresh rice. Park Caillou went back to his computer to browse news. Lately a rumor was spreading in the community that Defender was a woman. The user who revealed this was Unicorn18. They drew attention by pointing to the shadow in Defender's latest post showing proof of a kill inside. Park Caillou was conflicted. Was it really a woman? Killing might be easier if alive. But moving and disposing of bodies wasn't simple. Could she do it all herself? Impossible. Maybe it was just coincidence in the photo. But then Park Caillou absent-mindedly stared at the screen, remembering Sang-hoon's words through the radio. Survive. But he denied it. Who would die? This is the safest place in the world. Deep down Park Caillou still remembered Lee Sang-hoon's figure. Recalling their time in the same class, Sang-hoon raised his hand to ask the teacher. Teacher, I have a question about the classification of invasive species you just explained. I remembered his name always at the front row, sincerely asking questions. He remembered Sang-hoon's eyes, always an unrelenting competitor. The radio call interrupted his thoughts. Seeing the caller ID, Park Caillou clicked his tongue. Kim Da-ran again. He slowly answered. What now, Representative Kim Da-ran? If this is about Jeju Island, I already said no. During this time I'm not going outside. Park Kyu spoke wearily. I'm hanging up. Da-ran cut him off with shocking words. The director is dead. Park Kyu froze, thinking he misheard. He asked again. The director? You mean Lee Sang-hoon? How so suddenly? Da-ran hesitated then spoke. He made an extreme choice. He left a will. The sound of planes roared in the sky. Da-ran continued. Someone must take responsibility for this situation. Will you attend the funeral? Park Kyu couldn't believe his ears. His heart was still as water. In this ruined world, there was no place for those who were sincere and righteous. Da-ran told him every single word, but Park Kyu remained silent throughout. We arranged a memorial altar at the military hospital where my husband worked. Considering the current situation, this is all we could do. The girl also mentioned another matter. Senior, to get to Seoul, you will have to cross the road full of sealed containers. Right. At this moment Park Kyu finally awoke. Is there a problem? Da-ran's voice came from the radio. Since yesterday, the security forces have begun deploying troops there. She mentioned something quite important. The awakened ones. Da-ran's voice grew gentler as if comforting. I remind you first because it may be very awkward if you run into them. Park Kyu's eyes showed a trace of sadness, but he still focused on the issue. They deployed awakened forces here, in every corner. Really? You want to fight an honorable battle with me at all costs. You want to give me trouble until the very end of the journey. That's why you force me to take a shortcut, right? Sang-hoon stood with folded arms without speaking, ignoring all the questions Park Kyu asked. He felt like the man had just shrugged slightly. Park Kyu's voice grew sharper. Only you would do this. He looked down toward the room, but the illusion of Lee Sang-hoon in my mind gave no reply. He went to the weapon stand, 2 strategic axes, among the few items he brought after being dismissed. Park Kyu's face showed no emotion, even though taking them was useless, but at least. At night, he carried an old bicycle outside. With a faint hope, I still wanted to visit Lee Sang-hoon. As a soldier for the last time, to show my respect, I packed up the weapons and set off. To avoid the road where the forces were stationed, I took a detour through dirt roads. Suddenly someone ahead shone a motorcycle light to block me. Hey, stop there. You can't take this road. Seung-hyun froze a little. He let out a sound. He covered his eyes from the glare, then recognized the man. Wasn't that Park Kyu? And he too knew this man, Baek Seung-hyun, a freelancer hunter who took on various missions for members of the National Committee. He pointed behind him, asking, "Where are you going?" Park Kyu answered shortly. "Seoul," Seung-hyun seriously suggested. "Then please take some time to follow me." His tone was full of questioning. "You won't let me through, huh?" Seung-hyun lit a cigarette and pondered. "I also want to let you pass." He slowly turned his head back. In the distance, several people were already standing guard. Seung-hyun hinted to him, "But as you see, I have no authority here. Those with glowing blue pupils over there are the real inspectors." Park Kyu frowned with displeasure, giving him a slight glare. He also noticed the tiger printed on Seung-hyun's shirt. They were likened to roaring tigers, just like he described. They were the real hunters, not the old-fashioned bunch like us. From then, Park Kyu gained new knowledge. The new type of hunters began to appear about 6 years ago, when humans started experiencing strange phenomena. This phenomenon first rose after 30% of humanity was lost to the monster outbreak. It was called the Awakened. Strange powers appeared among humans, the new mankind. Those who awakened powers similar to monsters were discovered. Through comprehensive research, scientists uncovered a way to artificially create such power. At the same time, the government actively recruited these people to become hunters. As a result, the old hunters, the outdated ones, were removed from the battlefield. At this time, a young man above looked down expressionlessly and asked, "Uncle, who's that?" Seung-hyun reported, "A former hunter." The man asked again, "A former hunter, like a part-time hunter like him." He could only force a smile to get by. Then Seung-hyun covered his mouth, glancing at Park Kyu. The young man posed a trickier question. But why would a former hunter go down this dark dirt road instead of the main road? You're not a criminal or anything, are you? Park Caillou tilted his head back, questioning, which squad are you from? All three were shocked, especially the young man. What? Right after saying that, he jumped down and walked closer. The young man shoved his hands into his pockets and mocked. This guy's hopeless. He leaned close to Park Caillou's ear and whispered sarcastically, "Hey mister, which squad?" He didn't bother hiding. "I'm from Squad 13. The man probed further, his tone heavier with mockery. "Ah, but squads before Squad 18 cannot be considered seniors, right, except a few exceptions. However, Mr. Here, surely you studied, so you must know how dangerous sealed containers are. While we can still resolve this with words, why don't you obediently go back home?" Park Caillou's hand in his pocket bulged veins. He was suppressing his rage as much as possible. Anger clouds judgment. Turning back might be the most reasonable choice. In his head, Sang-hoon's voice seemed to urge, "Hey, are you coming or not?" Park Caillou's eyes still carried the man's image. Suddenly, he pointed far away. A strange cocoon was on the bridge. Park Caillou asked, "So you mean if I handle that cocoon, then I can pass, right?" The man laughed loudly with scorn. "You're really funny. A washed-up guy like you. You think you can do anything." His gang also jeered happily. "If he succeeds, Jai Hai, escort him to wherever he wants." "What? Why me, senior? Do your best." Facing this issue, Park Caillou's face remained emotionless. According to old military doctrine, there were not many tactics for fighting monsters solo. His eyes narrowed with determination. Then at some point Park Caillou had already taken the axe and walked over. "The only method I can apply now is close-range combat." A murderous aura surged through Park Caillou. His body took aim, preparing to strike. Park Caillou's axe swung, about to hit the cocoon. A screeching sound cut through, creating a burning clash. Some black spheres suddenly appeared near Park Caillou. They pierced straight through him in waves. The young man sweated coldly. "What the hell is that guy?" Seung Hyun was equally shocked. He struck it repeatedly without mercy. Every eye watched in astonishment. Was he trying to awaken it? Park Caillou's eyes finally softened. A pale blue gate appeared, shimmering like the ocean. They all froze in disbelief, mouths agape. They screamed in panic. "He's crazy. He really awakened it. It's a monster. Run!" Wind lashed against Park Caillou's face. A bizarre creature with a bald head emerged, its head shaped like an ancient statue. Is it a sorcerer type? He widened his eyes for a closer look. Then Park Caillou judged at the most dangerous moment. No, it's a soul manipulation type. The monster stretched out. Dozens of ghastly hands lunged, but he still charged determinedly with both axes. Park Caillou swung decisively, hacking off several hands of the monster. Then he landed gracefully in the most heroic way. At zero distance they couldn't deploy their formation, although thousands of thorned arms would keep sprouting from the severed parts to attack. As long as I recklessly press in close, the only thing left is to chop its head off. That's it. The new hunters were stunned at the sight. After finishing the monster, he turned back and barked at the cowards. "What are you standing around for? Clear the barricade for me, immediately." Park Caillou turned his head back, revealing his sharp, handsome jawline. He emphasized once again, "Aren't you going to hurry up?" Seung Hyun stared wide-eyed at Park Caillou. His image had completely changed in Seung Hyun's eyes, while those around murmured, "How could it be? He took down that monster so easily with just 2 axes. Is he even human anymore?" The young man hesitated and asked Jai Hai, "Can you give him a ride?" She immediately refused, even making excuses. "No way. You're the ones who underestimated him, not me. Besides, I don't even have a driver's license. How could I take him?" Suddenly Seung Hyun smiled with hidden meaning. "Everyone just stay here. I'll give him a ride." He reassured them, "It'll be fine. I'm an experienced man. Let me get the car." Seung Hyun even told them to do something. "You can study the monster's corpse while I'm gone." At that moment Park Caillou had a faint suspicion. Beak Seung Hyun is in for an interesting trip. The blue car sped along the empty road. He politely expressed, "You don't have to personally drive me there. But Seung Hyun still wanted to help wholeheartedly. It's fine, I want to drive you. You helped me shut those kids up. A bunch of useless high schoolers always calling me the adult. He couldn't say anything in reply. Park Kyu fell into his own thoughts. The power of awakened ones was measured by a scale called levels. The gap in strength between levels could be described as heaven and earth. From level 1 to 4, awakened gained some supernatural abilities like a sixth sense and clairvoyance, with no change in physical strength. Level 5 to 9, they gained additional abilities such as psychic powers, magnetic control, or telekinesis. Usually at this level, awakened could already participate in real combat. And after that, only a few among the awakened could advance to level 10 or higher, at which point their powers surpassed the reality humanity lived in, almost becoming another species, an invincible species. Park Kyu's face showed no emotion, relieved that those people finally sat still. Suddenly, he asked Seung Hyun a rather strange question. If it were you, you would do the same, right? He focused on driving and answered, maybe, but it's quite a headache. Seung Hyun smiled, his eyes suddenly thoughtful. So I won't. If I got injured, it would be very troublesome. Because Seung Hyun had people behind him to protect. He confided, when I was single, I thought I had nothing to lose, so I lived recklessly. But now it's different. If something happens to me, who will take care of my wife and kids? So no matter how bad life gets, I just have to endure. Anyway, thank you very much. It's been a long time since I felt this peaceful. The car finally arrived at an abandoned hospital. Park Kyu slowly opened the door to get out. As he stepped outside, Seung Hyun called out, wanting to warn him, after Director Lee Sang-hoon's death, our relationship with the National Committee has gotten worse, so be careful. He replied emotionlessly, I don't care. Seung Hyun's face showed more worry for him. But you do have some friends in the National Committee, right? These days you can't fully trust anyone. Especially in this world where dignity is like weeds by the roadside. Hearing this, Park Kyu's eyes also shifted. Inside the hospital warehouse, the room was desolate without a soul. Even the hallway outside was the same, endlessly cold. Sang-hoon's portrait was placed in a white wreath. Park Kyu came to pay respects. I'm here, Sang-hoon. He silently blamed. Why is your funeral here? I searched so long to find it. 3 incense sticks in the urn were burning out. A voice spoke. The Lee Sang-hoon project. At some point Da-ran had appeared beside him, telling him some information about him before his death. The higher-ups even used his name for the Jeju Island relocation project, so there was no other way. You know why this project is important, don't you? Park Kyu glanced at her, still cold. Perhaps he knew some part of it. The intensity of rifts is proportional to population, and the rift in Jeju Island was relatively weak. The terrain there also very suitable for a defense base. They were probably thinking of pouring all resources into that island, so in the future we could live safely. But you also thought of the tragic fate of those left behind. The worst part of that project is that those not chosen to resettle on the island will be left to die. After a long while, Park Kyu finally spoke for Sang-hoon's injustice. But Lee Sang-hoon alone couldn't complete the project. Why was he the only one to bear responsibility? Da-ran understood his feelings, because to implement this project, up to 10 million Seoul citizens had to be abandoned. So they needed someone to take responsibility before the public, to stabilize people's hearts, to make them settle. And they entrusted that role to a young, passionate man. He was very tough. Da-ran's eyes half closed. She pictured such a strong Sang-hoon. Then Da-ran remembered something important. You know, Director Lee attended my wedding but only gave 30,000 won. Park Kyu thought that was normal. 30,000 won is the minimum, isn't it? She immediately denied it. The minimum at that time was 50,000 won. Hearing that Park Kyu could only smile wryly. He was always like that. Da-ran folded her arms and nodded. More like all directors were like that. Suddenly Da-ran remembered something else. Speaking of which, maybe this is an important clue. Right after Director Lee died, someone visited him, the day the Jeju Island project was approved. Perhaps right before you contacted him. Anyway, someone had to stand up. That person could not be someone powerful. Nor could it be a complete nobody, but someone who could stand in the present while looking toward the future. On one side 10 million lives, on the other the future of mankind, the one who decides which way the scale tips. Back when Sang-hoon was still alive, he was pulling back the curtain to look outside. Han Min sat on the sofa casually drinking water. You'll be chosen, Sang-hoon. Da Ran stood in a corner, hearing every word. You'll do what even professors couldn't accomplish. Sang-hoon turned to confirm, really, do they really think we can live well on Jeju Island? Do they really think so? Han Min, he looked into his glass, smirked wickedly. Who knows? Han Min's eyes gleamed strangely. Time will answer your question. This information surprised Park Kyu. Kang Han Min was also involved in the Lee Sang-hoon project. Da Ran looked at him, not knowing how to answer. She shifted to another matter. Also, before leaving, Kang Han Min said this: the old ones won't be needed on Jeju Island anymore. Then Da Ran's demeanor grew shy, carefully asking Park Kyu, by the way, does your base still have any vacant rooms? He still looked at Da Ran and listened. It seems the world is about to collapse once again. Time goes back to the time when Park Kyu's teammates were on the hospital list. A pair of hurried feet strode down the hallway. The wounded who were lying there all curiously looked outside. Everyone simultaneously performed the military salute to him, greeting the captain. Park Kyu's eyes glanced around, his face sinking. Everyone had scars and wounds, whether heavy or light. Familiar faces were looking at him. Then Park Kyu suggested that those there, the wounded, should leave the team. He coldly expressed, on the battlefield, an incompetent ally is even more dangerous than an enemy. I have seen countless people die in vain, not even able to fight properly because of weakness and incompetence like you. I don't want to see this anymore, so reflect on yourselves and voluntarily leave the team. A girl nearby sobbed, the soft side of her heart revealed, I can't do this anymore. After hearing those words, I can't endure it anymore. Da Ran, let's leave together. If we stay under that man, we will truly go insane. The girl immediately refused that invitation. Although her eyes showed hesitation, I will stay. My pride is hurt, but indeed I have fallen behind because of my injury. Da Ran firmly uttered each word. I will grit my teeth and endure until the end. And surely I will throw those words back into his face. Outside the door, Park Kyu's eyes tightened slightly. Then he left that room. At that time, Kim Da Ran was someone with a fighting spirit as strong as mine. Returning to the present, Da Ran timidly touched her arm and said, I don't need a large room. She only wanted to protect her loved one. Only our son, I beg you, just one child. Can you accept that? Park Kyu looked at her with different eyes, but Kim Da Ran had changed. The sky outside the hospital was beginning to brighten. He sat on the sofa, clutching his head with her earlier words, Senior, I beg you. This made Park Kyu more and more troubled. When Da Ran bowed her head, only wishing peace for her child, I will send the child and a little money. Just give the boy a place to sleep. With a mother's heart, she suddenly burst into tears. Da Ran lifted her tearful face and pleaded, Seoul is in chaos. I cannot leave my child in such a place. If anything happens to my child, then I don't want to live anymore, Senior. Park Kyu was haunted by those words. He closed his eyes, forcing himself to be resolute in this matter. No, I must refuse. Park Kyu had to think about the overall situation. The current situation was no longer ordinary chaos. If his force was involved in that and led to civil war, things would be very complicated. He could not operate as a child care center indefinitely. At that moment, a man wearing a cap and hoodie approached. Young-ho walked past him quietly. He went to the reception and politely introduced himself. I am a subordinate of Director Lee Sang-hoon, Defense Team 18, Hong Young-ho. That caught his attention. Yes, room 5 in the second basement floor. By the way, do you have any spare medicine?
My sister is seriously ill.
The receptionist replied coldly. At this time, where would spare medicine come from? More importantly, are you really authorized? This place is for national commissioners only. Not everyone can enter. Suddenly Park Kyu stepped in to back him up. I am Park Kyu, a schoolmate of Director Lee Sang-hoon and superior of Commissioner Kim Da-ran. Along with a scrutinizing look from top to bottom at Young-ho, and a junior here to show respect. So please give us medicine. This situation stunned him on the spot. A moment later, the receptionist rearranged the documents after finishing. Outside, Young-ho bowed 90 degrees repeatedly thanking. Thank you very much, senior. Park Kyu didn't pay much attention. He asked another matter. If you are in Team 18, then surely you are not close with seniors or juniors. Are you really an acquaintance of Lee Sang-hoon? He scratched his head pretending ignorance. No, actually that was just the name of a high-ranking official I could think of. I thought if I mentioned his name they might give me some medicine. From here, interesting stories were about to be revealed. Hunters of Team 18. From Team 18 upward were the main hunter force, all awakeners, meaning from that level onward, those without power would have no future as hunters. They could hardly stand on the front lines against monsters, and were forced to do dirty jobs in the reserve force until they were thrown out. But their juniors were awakeners who had developed supernatural powers, while their seniors were former students with rich combat experience, stuck and stranded in between. They were known as the cursed class. Then Park Kyu informed him of some sad news. Currently you cannot find proper medicine on the market, other than painkillers and fever reducers. Those words made Young-ho check his bag. His face showed a trace of sadness as he replied, "That's why I have no other choice and must come to the central hospital managed by the National Committee." Every word of Young-ho made him pay more attention. Otherwise my sister will be in danger. The sky gradually changed color. A plane shot across. Before leaving, Young-ho bowed again. "Thank you, senior. Take care of your health." Park Kyu turned his head back and said, "Go." As Park Kyu's figure gradually disappeared, he secretly felt relieved inside. Young-ho quickly returned to base, excitedly telling today's story to his sister. "I'm back. The operating room wasn't running, but I got the medicine. I need to dig more information about the national commissioners. I couldn't sneak into Director Lee Sang-hoon's funeral." Da-jeong still hadn't spoken a word. He eagerly continued, "But more importantly, do you know what just happened? Don't be shocked. I met Skeleton." Young-ho passionately spoke, but didn't know that a gun was aimed at the back of his head. Park Kyu uttered a threat as he slowly glanced back. "Seems you've finished your investigation, right? So I'll be quick." He growled suppressively. "Raise your hands and put your stuff down." Park Kyu only spat out 3 words, "Surrender." Young-ho raised both hands, obediently complying. He slowly lifted his foot, readying his stance. Very quickly, Young-ho suddenly spun around and knocked away the gun in Park Kyu's hand. That move left him unarmed. Now Young-ho held the gun in control. "If you want to talk, then you should put the gun away first." "Right." He hadn't finished speaking when Park Kyu flicked his hand to counterattack. This sudden move made Young-ho widen his eyes at Park Kyu. His agile skills dashed forward trying to grab the gun. Soon the gun fell back into Park Kyu's hands. He held it firmly, pointing straight at Young-ho. He was not inferior either, kicking to knock the gun away. Young-ho decisively flung the gun out of his hand. The gun at that moment flew far away, a few meters from both of them. Young-ho's agile body and calm eyes combined. Then what immediately caught his sight was the knockout punch and blazing gaze of Park Kyu. He struck Young-ho with a blow across the face, but he did not stop, quickly pulling Park Kyu's shoulder. Young-ho intended to return the punch but failed. This time, Park Kyu lowered his body under him. While Young-ho lost sight, he clenched his fist and struck upward. That blow sent Young-ho sprawling to the ground. He wiped his mouth, laughing loudly. "Skeleton, you are indeed very strong." Suddenly Young-ho stopped, stunned silent. When Park Kyu's hand was still holding the gun. When had he taken it back? Young-ho was not to be outdone. He silently drew a long-bladed knife. "You want to end this here? Fine, but this is only a temporary fight." Young-ho's eyes lowered, realizing something was wrong. The figure of Da-jeong was behind him. Young-ho immediately thought of his sister's life. If a stray bullet went there, he understood Da-jeong's life was priceless. So he slowly dropped the knife and raised both hands. Young-ho wanted to surrender to Park Kyu. I'm just joking. He sincerely said, let's calmly talk it over. Park Kyu was not very surprised, just as expected. He had someone backing him. He leaned his body, glancing behind. Young-ho calmly asked him, even though being a hostage, more importantly, since when did you start suspecting? Park Kyu fell into contemplation for a moment, his face unchanged. Then he answered briefly in one sentence, from the beginning. His long-lashed eyes widened. What? Park Kyu began to voice his thoughts. When you reach the level of a captain, you will understand. You came from District 18, the cursed district. I know the dirty work you had to do abroad. Back to the time Young-ho was working, a voice called out, Hey, done yet, old men? A young man shoved his hands into his pockets laughing. Hurry up. It's not like fighting monsters. Why so slow? With each sentence, the man's mockery grew heavier. Can't even finish a simple throat slitting. Young-ho walked over to advise, Hey, ignore them. Just do the job. His eyes held no emotion, raising the knife preparing. If you don't have skills, then what can you do? After finishing, he went elsewhere to check. Not done yet, his friend replied. Young-ho, we're almost done. Young-ho's face was covered in blood, his tone indifferent. If no name is kept, carve it on their heads. Then the corpse was marked with the name wrapped top. One by one, the other bodies were tagged with notes. Every word Park Kyu spoke was completely correct. Frontline battles were always battles for awakeners, so you guys handled the dirty work after battles right. Known by the name the Assassination Squad. Young-ho's face turned thoughtful. What? So the rumors have spread. But to say you knew from where, unbelievable. Park Kyu still held the gun firmly aimed at him, admitting himself. Of course, there are things that made me realize. I went to the area where you once were. I had the chance to examine the bodies you handled. He slowly admitted, your physique, along with those familiar footsteps. The way you control your hands, even the habit of constant observation. And also the voice when you came asking for medicine. Junior of the director, Hong Young-ho, Class 18. Park Kyu had observed with extreme detail. Thanks to that, I guessed. And he gave a firm conclusion. You are the protector. After hearing everything, the corner of Young-ho's lips slightly curled. Then he bent down, laughing wildly. Park Kyu's attitude remained serious. What's so funny? Young-ho found his deduction ridiculous. I thought only District 18 was scary. Turns out it's normal for hunters. But your reasoning, near the end it's a bit weak. Park Kyu froze slightly and asked back, what? Young-ho glanced behind at his sister, preparing to expose a truth. Yes, I left traces out of habit from District 18, and concluding me like that. Quite impressive. But Da-jong stepped down from under the car. She came to stand beside her brother, Young-ho's face showing some pride. I am not the protector. Meeting my sister, Da-jong's eyes were full of emptiness. Young-ho proudly and excitedly declared, we are a pair of protectors. Park Kyu frowned, pondering for a moment. So they guessed the protector was a girl. That's true, isn't it? He pointed to his sister and recounted some past. I was usually the one active on the battlefield, while my sister wrote and handled other things at a safe distance. My sister may be a keyboard hero, but in real life she is quite timid. But that was not what he wanted to hear. Nonsense. You two are on the same team. Isn't that a secret? Why tell me? Da-jong glanced at Park Kyu while whispering to Young-ho. He grinned, baring his white teeth, and so did she. It's fine. Just for fun. Why so serious? Park Kyu vaguely realized their identity. I had a hunch from the start. These two? They were not serious at all. Young-ho was still trying to justify. We are not bad people, don't you think? Park Kyu still aimed the gun threatening. He judged exactly as their actions showed. They acted as they pleased without thinking of consequences. The two siblings stood like that, confronting Park Kyu. Young-ho sneered. Why, want another match? He thought for a while before denying that. Park Kyu turned to leave, muttering irritably, such a waste of time. Suddenly he called out, Hey, skeleton. Young-ho's attitude was friendly. Da-jong behind even said goodbye. Thank you for helping today. See you next time. Park Kyu frowned, puzzled. Need to meet again. Then they got in the car, gradually driving away. He returned to base as on normal days, but the moment of meeting again came sooner than expected. The computer lit up. Something was sent. A message from Defender. Seems Defender needed something. Any spare ammo? If yes, then exchange for supplies. Park Kyu immediately asked the identity. The sister. Defender replied, yes. He texted back with only 2 words, none spare. Defender immediately threatened, don't lie, want to die? Park Kyu read, muttering to himself, doesn't look like real life at all. His reply remained the same, really none. So she had to lower herself. What if I beg? Park Kyu continued to refuse. Defender shifted to his demand, what do you want? But his attitude was still the same. What do I want? Nothing. Defender offered a tempting benefit. What if I increase interaction for your posts? Park Kyu narrowed his eyes, pondering the message. In the end, he still asked the location and brought along a scribbled map. First, Park Kyu observed the surroundings. The place she mentioned was an abandoned prison overlooking the amusement park on the outskirts of Gwangju. A place where everything was decrepit, unused for long. Alone, he stood in a vast empty site. It was high, good for defense, but too open. Maybe that's why they handled threats nearby rather than hiding here. Suddenly something creaked. The iron gate slowly opened. Park Kyu instinctively froze, turned his head to look. Since when had there been a corpse hanging from a tree? He glanced, then turned away in weariness. Right then, Young-ho came out waving. Hey skeleton, was it hard to find this place? He looked at him, demanding explanation. What's with this corpse? But Young-ho's attitude only wanted to deflect, nothing to answer. Park Kyu's eyes tightened, wanting to track the opponent, as he said, Hong Young-ho. The grotesque thing on the tree had long dried, dangling under the moonlight. Park Kyu shifted the topic. Did you bring it? But why need so much ammo? In his hand he already held what they needed. Don't you prefer knives? This for your sister. Young-ho put a finger on his lips, signaling Park Kyu to be silent. He pointed another direction. Wait, be quiet and listen. He used his sharp hearing to focus. Amid the desolate night wind and the faint rustling of weeds, in the distance, a sound of sobbing, along with desperate cries for help. Please save me. Park Kyu looked toward Young-ho. A child? He nodded, smirking. Yes, exactly. There are several with loaded guns down by the amusement park. They have taken a child hostage. A bunch of scum are gathering there. Park Kyu frowned, worry showing in his eyes. Are they using children as hostages? Young-ho glanced briefly, looked at the person standing behind him and confirmed, yes. He continued to tell the story. When someone hears children crying and approaches them, they will kill the men. Bullets will continuously stream out from their guns, regardless of the men who cling to the children. The women are used like toys, their hair grabbed and dragged across the ground without mercy. Then they take the children to be used in the next begging round. His hand gripping the fence as he watched the lights flickering from the distant buildings opposite. Hearing this, Park Kyu couldn't help but curse. What a bunch of scum. Young-ho raised his head and looked at him as if pleased by that thought. Right? He smiled faintly and said, so I plan to kill every one of them. Above the quiet buildings, the night sky glittered with stars. Inside, the steady footsteps of 2 people climbed the stairs. Park Kyu's feet moved, but his cold face was thoughtful. He watched Young-ho's back walking ahead of him, replaying that expression he'd just shown in his head. That look. For someone talking about killing, he seemed disturbingly satisfied. Suddenly Young-ho's voice cut through his thoughts. Besides that, skeleton. Park Kyu heard him and felt a little unsettled. Young-ho turned to look at him and asked, did my sister tell you anything other than about the bullets? Park Kyu was puzzled. What else? What does he mean? Seeing no answer, Young-ho added, I guess she didn't mention anything. Park Kyu tightened his hand on the knife behind his back, thinking the protector was an unpredictable opponent. He wondered if Young-ho was planning to fight. Young-ho's voice continued, skeleton, do you have any snacks with you now? They reached the last step. Young-ho turned, waiting for an answer. Park Kyu found the question odd. What? No snacks, so they ate biscuits. The sound of chewing filled the room. The three of them enjoyed the tasty biscuits, which were the packaged cookies Park Caillou had brought for the trip. Crumbs stuck to Young Ho's mouth as he chewed and praised, "These cookies are delicious. You can bake?" Without waiting for Park Caillou's reply, he reached for another and complimented himself. Just as expected, I have an eye for people. Park Caillou thought to himself. But still, aren't these too reckless? What if I poison the food? He glanced at his cup of tea, thought for a moment, and decided he probably shouldn't drink it. Da Jiang silently turned her laptop screen toward him. A message on the screen read, "No poison, it's just good tea." Park Caillou looked at her in puzzlement. Can't she just speak normally? The on-screen reply said some things can't be put into words. Park Caillou stopped arguing and drank his tea with peace of mind. Young Ho glanced at her, smiling as he explained, "My sister prefers typing to talking." Now, back to the main topic. Shall we prepare? While the two siblings pondered their response, Park Caillou was surprised by the tasty tea. A few seconds later he spoke. If they're moving the hostages together, then their numbers must be large. The siblings listened silently as he spoke. He asked Young Ho, "How do you plan to deal with them?" He held a round of ammo in his hand, casually like holding a pen, and replied, "First we'll take care of the kids. When the crying dies down they'll come to check. We'll thin them out little by little, and then wipe them all out at the right moment." As for Da Jiang, Young Ho had already assigned her a role. "My sister will handle the kids. She's an expert with drones. She will drop bricks from above. No trace will be left to kill those brats." Park Caillou couldn't bear to ask again, "Do you really have to kill the children? If we don't, things will become much harder. They're not my blood either. Besides, if we release them, they won't last long unless we take them in and raise them." Da Jiang added softly, "In today's world, it's cruel for a child to live without parents or relatives beside them. What can we do?" After her words, the three fell silent. Park Caillou slowly sipped his tea and for a moment didn't know how to respond, thinking inwardly that this was something he would have to accept. The protector, if acting as a team, when faced with overwhelming enemies, must choose the best way to survive. Even so, he still felt the siblings' methods were a bit off. After thinking, he spoke slowly, "There is another way. It's a bit clumsy, but it has a higher chance of success and much less risk." The two exchanged silent looks. Elsewhere, in the amusement park, two men in black stood like guards. Suddenly a drone appeared in the night sky, Da Jiang's drone. "First, we'll move the drone." The drone successfully drew the attention of the people on the ground. Gunfire immediately erupted without pause, aiming to lure the enemies away from their entry direction. Shouts rang out, "You fucking idiot! You missed again with that much. Try shooting back." The group chased the drone while yelling. Park Caillou and Young Ho watched the scene. The two nodded subtly to signal action. Park Caillou gripped his weapon, preparing to strike swiftly and silently. He pushed off with his feet and dashed forward. One man sensed something and turned his head. He caught a glimpse of something emitting light. Before he could identify it, Park Caillou attacked from behind, his gaze cold as if emitting a deadly light. The man had no time to react. His eyes widened and he died. Dealing with the guards behind was the next step. They were quickly taken out one by one with a few blows. They fell to the ground, returning to the earth with their eyes still wide in terror. After a while the men were down and strewn across the ground, no breath left. Park Caillou glanced around searching. He saw a tightly shut door and decided to go there. The door opened and he looked inside. The sleeping children woke as the outside light shone in. "Is it my turn?" a child stammered, drowsily asking him. Park Caillou stepped in and silently observed the child before him. Per the plan, they would choose one of the kidnapped children to use as bait. Young Ho had assisted him throughout, and they had already led one child out with them. Park Caillou told him, "Those following the drone will soon return. I need support from now." He glanced at him and smiled. "You sure you'll leave this spot for me?" Hearing the question, Park Caillou calmly looked at him. "Probably not for you, but I trust the protector's skills." Elsewhere in the amusement park area, the drone was finally shot down after a while. By Park Caillou's estimate, once the drone was down they'd realize there was no other important force, and they would soon return. This was anticipated. Then an unexpected appearance stunned the group. They grumbled, "The guards can't even handle a couple kids." A child had snuck out in front of them. They approached the boy and shouted, "You little brat, what are you doing wandering out at this hour? Why are you running around instead of sleeping?" Grabbing his collar, the boy only stared at them in terror. "Go back inside, hurry," they barked. And as the command ended they were ambushed from behind. A slit throat and instant death. The boy saw the horrific sight and panicked, collapsing and clutching his head. A hand rested on his shoulder, the glove stained with blood. Young-ho smiled and said to the boy, "Next go to the roller coaster. If we don't use the children as shields, it will become an obvious battle." Two trained killers with an innocent child as bait had swept away the low-tier scum. They only had time to scream in pain before their breaths were cut off, never to see the sun again. Dawn gradually broke over the amusement park. Corpses were scattered everywhere, perched on concrete platforms, blood flowing in rivers. Young-ho photographed some of the hooded bodies. "Which one should I upload?" he asked his sister after taking the shot. Da-jeong pointed at the phone, saying the unfiltered one is best. Regardless of the siblings' actions, Park Caillou turned to look at the little boy. The boy simply stared at him, a trace of fatigue on his face, but eyes still clear and childlike like gems. "It's over," he told the boy. "Go wherever you want with the other children." The boy still stood, looking at him without speaking or leaving. Suddenly Young-ho turned to him, looking suspicious. "Skeleton, you're really cool. Didn't you try to protect them? I thought you'd take them in and raise them." "In a world like this, who can protect whom?" Park Caillou paused and then said, "And at least I'm more humane than those who wanted to kill those children, right?" His question sent the siblings into thought. Young-ho stared at him, then elongated his tone. That judgment, his hand tightened on the deformed, blood-stained knife. "So you want to finish the fight you missed earlier, right?" Park Caillou remained calm in the face of his taunt. Young-ho squinted, waiting for an answer. Da-jeong looked at the two men with no emotion on her face. Suddenly a clear voice rang out, "Please don't fight. Thank you for saving us." Young-ho silently put his weapon back in his pocket. Park Caillou also sat quietly on a chair, bowing his head slightly. The boy slowly turned his back and left. Behind him were three people with different burdens, but perhaps they shared the same thought. "Yes, when it's over, this is the best choice we could make." Young-ho looked after the boy, slightly frowning. "That brat. If he hadn't interfered earlier, we could have had a spectacular fight." He still gripped the knife behind his back, staring at him. "Right, skeleton." Park Caillou's face turned cold. He frowned and glared at Young-ho. "You were very angry when we proposed killing the kids. You're always sensitive about that matter, aren't you?" Young-ho looked at Park Caillou, continuing in a mocking tone, "That half-hearted hypocrisy." You clenched your fists tightly, just silently staring at him. "Just because you don't want to see yourself as a bad person, you put everyone around you in danger. I've witnessed that scene so many times I'm sick of it." Da-jeong, standing behind, listened to her brother, quietly rubbing her forehead. Park Caillou realized, at that moment, as he spoke and looked at me. His eyes brushed over the wound on Da-jeong's forehead, and I clearly felt the resentment of the protector, not directly aimed at me, but at someone else. Pondering this, a thought flashed in his eyes. He recalled, was he referring to that body hanging on the tree? Even though dead, they still left him dangling there, so obviously the object of that resentment was. Thinking that, Park Caillou loudly denied, "I'm not a hypocrite. And even if I were, I have no reason to adapt to your way of handling things." Young-ho stood beside Da-jeong, silent as he heard these words from him. Park Caillou affirmed to himself, "That's right, I truly am not that kind of person." Images of the past appeared. He remembered his own story. The screams full of worry. "Senior, this is the professor's squad. We need rescue support. The leading professor has fallen into the fissure." Voices kept calling his name. Do you hear me? If you do, respond to orders. Park Caillou. Any signs of life? I don't know. We can't check the situation inside the fissure. Observing from above, with the shape of arms and legs, one could conclude one of his arms and legs seemed broken. We need to confirm if he's alive before losing contact. Too dangerous. Stop searching. A girl looked at him, then spoke again. The professor always said this. On the battlefield, there's no place for the incompetent. Now, that merciless judgment also applied to him. We should act as he said. These words stunned the worried group for a moment. The voice continued like a verdict. He has no value anymore. A month later, I struggled to survive and return from that hell, but the battlefield no longer had a place for me. After that incident, my goal became simple. Just to survive, even if alone. I was powerless. I couldn't change anything. It was time to accept that. Just take care of myself. Accept that era has passed. Sometimes, small situations reminded me that I wasn't entirely powerless, but the cruel reality I had witnessed still never changed. Now Park Caillou was confident to declare loudly, "My own life is my only priority. I merely chose the safest path based on that." Young-ho listened to his words, then fell silent for a while. The corner of his lips curved into a smile. Then the siblings laughed loudly together. Park Caillou felt helpless. "Can't you be serious and listen just once?" Young-ho stopped laughing. "Sorry, I just really like your way of thinking. We're the same. Our safety is the most important thing, and anyone who threatens that has no right to live." Park Caillou stared intently at the two before him, feeling uneasy about this notion of camaraderie. When the protector killed intruders without hesitation, even enjoying the process and proving it, I too disposed of intruders mercilessly, but always carried a faint sense of pretense. The three stood in opposing factions, carrying their own emotions in different ways. But the fact that we were all killers who only cared about our own safety was an unpleasant truth. Young-ho suddenly reached into his pocket, searching for something. "Here, take this. Remember, the day the aquatic monster species appeared, when we were saved thanks to your post." Young-ho held a small notebook in his hand as he spoke. His tone unusually serious. "Skeleton, you saved our lives. I want to thank you properly." He tore a page from the note and continued. "And I wanted to understand you better, so I kept sending messages, but you never replied, right?" Park Caillou recalled the messages Young-ho had sent, inwardly thinking, it sounded more like a threat that if I didn't, I'd be killed. "You're not scared, are you?" Young-ho asked while writing on the paper. "After everything at the hospital today, I feel like I owe you, so I'll repay it with this." He handed the finished paper to him. Park Caillou took it and asked, "What is this?" He looked at the paper in his hand, his eyes slightly trembling. It was a protector's summon ticket. Young-ho put his arm around his sister's shoulder, looked at him and said, "If you ever get into trouble, contact me. I'll come, just once, no matter where you are." Young-ho finished speaking, then turned away. Da-jeong mouthed his name. She reminded, "From now on, reply to my messages, okay?" Then the siblings turned their backs and left together. Park Caillou stood there, lowering his eyes to the ticket in his hand. He looked at the words written on the paper and quietly judged. They are impulsive and straightforward. They wouldn't lie about this. He looked in the direction the siblings had gone. Avoiding such a dangerous factor as the protector was a great victory. After that day, according to our agreement, the protector began leaving comments under all my posts. But their enthusiasm was somewhat over the top. That enthusiasm drew much attention. "What is this protector? A new way of threatening to kill people? Why are you suddenly praising this boring skeleton? Are they dating?" The owner of those comments was Da-jeong. She seemed very amused by the situation. Park Caillou's reputation on the news feed was worsening, but he didn't like appearing there anyway. While Da-jeong felt satisfied after her comments, lying on the sofa hugging a pillow full of joy. A few days later, Park Caillou received a message from Kim Da-ran. "Long time no see, senior. Thank you for your visit last time." He politely replied, "Are you doing well?" The voice from the phone sounded a bit sudden, "But can we meet for a while?" He hesitantly asked back, "Are you coming alone?" The sun above shone brightly through the trees. Park Caillou stood quietly in the warm sunlight waiting. A car drove up and stopped in front of him. Dao Ran got out, slowly walking towards him. "I'm here, senior." Park Caillou silently looked at her, inwardly thinking, last time she asked if my bunker had room. Did she really come to entrust her child to me? As he turned to go inside, he asked, "You came alone, right?" "Yes, I came alone," Dao Ran added. "I wanted to see what kind of place you're living in." Hearing this, Park Caillou felt puzzled. What did she mean? A random house tour. If she came to leave the child, she would have brought him. Thinking that, but still naturally saying, "Since you're here, take a look around." Park Caillou gestured toward his place, introducing, "Welcome to Skelton's proud palace." Dao Ran looked at his place before her, eyes wide in astonishment. Someone really lives here? Her question left Park Caillou speechless. Dao Ran stepped inside, looking around, then commented, "It looks like you arranged this place to resemble a temporary storage room." She caught a smell and curiously asked, "And what's that smell? Is it the basement or what?" Without waiting for an answer, Dao Ran kept questioning, "Why is there a toilet in the middle of the room?" Park Caillou didn't reply, instead impatiently asked back, "Did you come here to play the nagging mom role or what?" Dao Ran froze slightly, softly saying, "This may be my last chance to nag you." She moved to the main point. The National Committee is splitting between the military faction and the parliamentary faction. It was discovered that the frontline army wasn't included in the Jeju migration plan. To resolve it, the military, in charge of frontline control, is marching to Jeju. Dao Ran emphasized, "Soon, civil war will break out." Hearing this, Park Caillou was shocked. "Don't tell me." Without letting him finish, Dao Ran cut in, "I will also join the rebels. Maybe I retired and became an old woman. But I can't just stand by and watch this injustice." He stayed silent, listening to her finish. These words reminded Park Caillou of himself in hardship. With broken leg and arm strapped tight, he still had to keep moving forward. Dao Ran spoke as if reminding herself, "I used to be a member of the legendary hunter team, the Professor's Corps. When I first met you again, I thought, aren't you the only one who hasn't aged? But when I saw you under the sunlight earlier, I noticed you had aged a little." Dao Ran was silent a moment, then spoke. "We may never meet again," her eyes showing lingering emotion. "Take care of yourself." In the small space, the two stood face to face, close. Her final words sounded like a farewell, and live well, senior. Live well, senior. The helicopter gradually descended onto the rooftop of a ruined skyscraper. It stopped in front of a girl who had been waiting. The pilot announced, "Miss Hunter, we have arrived in Seoul." As soon as he finished speaking, a hand reached out, blasting a surge of high-pressure heat that blew up the control panel right before the pilot's eyes. "You're a terrible pilot. I almost died from dizziness," Woo Min-hee complained while retracting her special arm. The girl wearing glasses, who had been waiting, smiled politely to welcome her. "You must be tired from the journey. We have arranged a room for you. Would you like to go there right away?" Min-hee gently smiled in response, "No need. Show me the report first. Senior Han Min told me there's someone I really want to meet." The person mentioned was Park Caillou, who appeared in the documents about the strategy to exterminate monsters in the Papong industrial zone. Gentle sunlight added golden hues to the leaves as a skeleton cry rang out. Sue, with her long hair tied neatly on both sides, slowly pushed her bicycle toward him. "You're here." Park Caillou waved back at the girl. "Long time no see." The girl spoke directly. "My mother told me to give this to you as a gift." He asked back, "A spear. Why give me this?" Sue explained, "Lately there have been more bombings in the north, so my mother thought it could help you." He accepted the gift. "Thank you. Before you go, take some snacks." In the distance, loud explosions echoed. Perhaps a few more bombs had been dropped. Park Caillou reminisced. It has been 2 years and 2 months since the nuclear bomb fell on Seoul. Just as Kim Da-ran predicted, Seoul has fallen into civil war. Inside Park Caillou's small house, a question rang out. "How is your mother? Has she been well lately?" he asked while preparing a plate of fruit. Sue proudly said, "Mother taught me to shoot. I learn fast, you know, Park Caillou thought to himself. Indeed, education for children in the apocalypse. He reminded her, you must be careful. You might provoke some factions in Seoul, but I know you'll handle everything well. The girl ate fruit while obediently responding to his warning. The faction holding military power was the National Committee, composed of former senior government officials and hunters. They were also known as the Parliamentary Faction, and had led chaotic South Korea in the early days of the apocalypse. But later, when people discovered that the key officials of this faction had planned to abandon Seoul and flee to Jeju Island with their close subordinates, the frontline military faction, the Corps, grew furious at this betrayal and aimed their weapons at Seoul. At first, it seemed the Corps had the upper hand, forming small groups, firing continuously at the enemy, infiltrating unexpectedly and catching victims off guard. As the corpses lay sprawled on the floor, Min-hee appeared leisurely. She walked forward with a smile on her lips. But the Parliament had dispatched hunter forces stationed on Jeju Island and retaken the National Committee building. The two factions divided Seoul into two sides, like pieces on a chessboard, and so the civil war began. Park Caillou thought to himself, it seems they are preparing for negotiations, but I don't think it will work. He raised his hand to pat the girl's head as she ate. Tasty, isn't it? Sue chewed and replied, yes, the fruit is so sweet. He carefully added, if anything unusual happens near the base, report to me immediately. If that place is in danger, then we are not safe either. Sue chewed while pondering unusual things. Suddenly she raised one hand high and the other low. After finishing her gestures, she asked, if I often see long white cylindrical tubes, does that count as unusual? She added, they're quite far from our home, in the empty land being developed into a new city. There are lots of them. These words stunned Park Caillou. He realized the influence of the rift was spreading. Park Caillou especially warned Sue, tell your mother not to attack those tubes. The girl worriedly asked, are they dangerous? His face grew serious. Yes, extremely dangerous. Hunters like me, especially those with tradition, only like to fight with their skills and strategic minds. Never, ever, face an overwhelming number of enemies alone. The only important thing is the strength of the group, no matter how deep we are in civil war. Park Caillou went to the Korean National Crisis Recovery Committee thinking, if the hunters of the National Committee understand how dangerous the current situation is, they will agree to help. When he tried to go inside, he was stopped. Without permission, you cannot enter. Park Caillou took out a card and held it up to them. I am a retired hunter. I discovered a nest with many monster chambers and came here to report it. The two guards looked at each other after hearing his words. After being granted entry, Park Caillou walked inside, muttering to himself, if I could, I wouldn't want to ask for help. But this time there's no other way. An official in the committee asked, why did you come here? I discovered a monster nest. Park Caillou placed photos on the table. Its location is here, and this is photographic evidence. He worried, if it is not contained, it will cause great casualties. The official typed, let me connect you to the person responsible for handling monsters. Suddenly a cold voice rang out, giving Park Caillou a bad feeling. You there? He turned toward the source of the voice. Around him several people pointed guns at him. Please come with us for a while. Park Caillou followed while explaining. I already said, I am a former hunter. Yes, but we were ordered by our superiors to detain you for preliminary investigation. Park Caillou was confined in a closed room, a dim lamp hanging overhead. He felt angry at being brought to the interrogation room, his hands cuffed. He reassured himself, fine, once they confirm my identity, they will release me and deal with that monster chamber. The sound of high heels slowly echoed. A girl entered. I heard you are still alive. He stared in shock at the newcomer. Min-hee continued, but I didn't expect you to appear on your own like this. She stood before Park Caillou, her smile unfriendly. Greeting, long time no see, Senior Park Caillou. He stammered at the sight of her. Woo Min-hee. Woo Min-hee. She had been Kim Da-ran's classmate and his junior at the academy. Min-hee raised her right arm at him. You still look strong, though some of us have fallen into this situation. Her arm could generate heat, and she could control that power. Only about 20 people in the world like them existed. Hunters of level 10 or higher, awakened hunters at savior level. Park Caillou coldly asked, "You were assigned here?" Min Hee stroked her chin. "Yes, Senior Han Min gave me some tasks." Her eyes glinted. "Oh right, we probably shouldn't mention Senior Han Min in front of you, should we?" At her provocative question, Park Caillou stayed silent. Knowing she was being intentional, she was still mean as before. Not forgetting his main purpose, Park Caillou pointed to the photo on the table. "I discovered a monster chamber in the southeast of Gyeonggi province. I also have photos as proof." Min Hee examined the photo. "This place is quite far from Jeju. If it's real, then Seoul doesn't have much time left." Her nails scratched the table. "But as you know, we are entangled in a civil war. To mobilize forces will take quite some time." Park Caillou asked, "Why don't you handle it yourself?" Hearing his question, Min Hee leaned on her chin in silence. She smirked and asked back, "What do I gain from that?" Outside, the golden sunlight warmed the street. The car moved slowly. Park Caillou recalled her earlier words, "If you help me with one thing, I will handle this monster nest. Actually, I need someone like you." She smiled. "When I am ready, I'll contact you." Park Caillou wondered, is she trying to turn me into a mercenary like Kim Da-ran? Suddenly, he saw a strange light. He stopped the car to observe, realizing that light often appeared right before a monster was summoned inside a chamber. Park Caillou quietly approached, hiding behind a rock to observe. He saw trees and land transformed, signs of long-term contamination. Park Caillou concluded, all these signs indicate an abnormal phenomenon. His steps continued forward. It was the moment a monster was summoned. He held his weapon and slowly entered. "If it's a small species, I can handle it alone." Except in one case, before him stood a giant insect. It had many limbs like other insects but unclear form. His eyes widened in concern, the warrior type. Back home, Park Caillou sat before his laptop, thinking. Why did it have to be summoned? He held his forehead in frustration. The warrior type, a melee monster that could massacre everything within reach of its two front limbs, like death itself. If I only wield 2 axes to fight it, no matter how strong I am, it's just suicide. I need specialized hunter equipment, but the only place I can get it. Park Caillou looked at the phone in his hand, brows furrowed, is the National Committee, where hunters are dispatched with the army. But now the one in power there is not Kim Da-ran but Woo Min Hee. I don't want to get involved with her anymore. But if not, the only other choice is, as he ruffled his hair, an alert sounded. He thoughtfully glanced at the notification. At that moment, the solution came to him from someone unexpected. His laptop screen displayed a new message. "Hello Skeleton, my master has a message for you. Skeleton, I want to meet you." A message from a mysterious man, John Nenon. Seeing this name, Park Caillou's eyes widened in shock. A ghost from the past, someone he thought had died long ago. John Nenon, a character who was once active in the early days of Viva, when the apocalypse had just broken out, and he was once a certified hunter at that time. John Nenon became famous with the public thanks to posting much quality information along with active community engagement. Even Park Caillou as well also received great help with their influence, but ever since those posts of his were exposed as stolen, his image before the public completely collapsed, caught up in an unforgettable incident right in the early days of Viva Gallery. The final result was, he collapsed violently. Park Caillou thought to himself, that person named John Nenon, thinking of his reappearance at this time. He looked at the tempting message that had been sent to him and fell into deep thought. Moments later, Park Caillou asked himself, there is always a representative, huh? Is he currently the leader of some organization? In the past, he once met Sang Hayu. In real life, he was much more superficial than online. Surprisingly, Park Caillou once thought he would have the ability to gather outstanding manpower. Sang Hayu had the ability to mobilize a large human force and then use them to show off his own abilities. But at the same time, this was also a talent that could be dangerously exploitable. Park Caillou silently wondered, Come to think of it, John Ninon was basically a hunter. He still kept the hunter's equipment, right? Thinking so, he immediately texted back, "Sorry, but I cannot go meet you. However, if it comes with certain conditions, then I can." He paused for a beat and then asked, "Do you have hunter equipment?" The other side quickly replied. Park Kyu also waited intently. The man sent a picture containing countless models of guns and then asked, "Which model?" As soon as he saw it, his eyes lit up unconsciously. In the end, he concluded, "Come to the address I send within the next 2 days. The meeting has been set." The address was sent by John Ninon's subordinate. The scene shifted to another place, in a poor neighborhood in the north of Seoul. John Ninon lived in a place like this, huh? Park Kyu calmly walked past a crowd of people with unfriendly eyes. After going further, he whispered, "But..." Park Kyu glanced back at those staring at him from behind. "I can feel it. Someone is watching amid the noise." Right at that moment, Secretary Kim spoke up calling, "Mr. Skelton." As soon as he finished, he introduced himself. "I am the one who contacted you on behalf of John Ninon. He is waiting for you at an old-looking tall building." Secretary Kim and Park Kyu entered one after the other. Before getting to the place, they still had to unlock another door. After entering, Secretary Kim spoke up. "John Ninon is in the basement of this building." Having said that, he shone a flashlight and led Park Kyu down. He looked at the endless staircase and silently sighed. Such a long way down. Why is there such a vast space beneath a mansion? Thinking so, Park Kyu then asked, "You said you served John Ninon. Exactly what is the relationship between you two?" Secretary Kim immediately replied, "You can call me a follower." He was unlocking a cabinet as he said, "We're almost there. From now on, please wear this." Seeing this, Park Kyu felt uneasy. "Wait a minute, isn't this radiation protective gear?" Secretary Kim calmly recounted, "Once there was an accident when we tried to introduce nuclear batteries as a semi-permanent energy source. A nuclear battery capable of generating power equivalent to a small-scale power plant. During operation, an accident happened, radiation leaked." Hearing this, he thought, equivalent to a small-scale power plant, huh? In this apocalyptic world, no one needs that much power. Just what the hell is going on here? Moments later, finally Sang Hyu's voice rang out. "Skelton, long time no see. Or should I call you the legendary hunter, the professor, right? The first time I saw you was on the Chorwon battlefield. Before that, I was just a rookie at training camp. I could only watch you from afar. But that sight truly was unforgettable. When I met you again, I completely did not recognize you." At this, Sang Hyu's eyes suddenly widened. "No, who would have known?" The image of you trampling on zombie corpses flashed again in his mind. Immediately after, Sang Hyu continued that those two were the same person. "After so long, I still remember you as the legendary professor who became my idol." Standing before his fervor, Park Kyu remained silent, not saying a word. Sang Hyu paused for a moment and then continued, "Skelton, at the moment the world turned its back on me, and those on Viva Gallery led the charge in stoning me. Only you did not. I have waited for the day to take revenge on those fools for a long time." Park Kyu was stunned hearing him curse, "Those pig-like fools. That is why I want to show you this first." Sang Hyu said as he pressed a button. Immediately countless screens powered on. He silently realized, a multi-monitor surveillance system, huh? This thing is a civilian surveillance system, huh? Sang Hyu seemed extremely pleased with this creation of his. Seeing this, Park Kyu could not help but shout, "What the hell are you doing, John Ninon?" After some switching around, finally the website screen appeared. He excitedly spoke, "This is it. A new community has been established." Facing Sang Hyu's intensity, Park Kyu was stunned and muttered something incomprehensible. Then, full of fervor, he said, "That's right. It is called FailNet. A new community site in the apocalyptic setting. I can do whatever I want on it. Famous posts, I decide. Permanent bans, I decide. I can even change the font for nicknames." Hearing this, Park Kyu began to feel something was off. At this moment Secretary Kim spoke. "FailNet operates thanks to hacking into a foreign website, no longer in use. Thanks to this, unlike Viva Gallery, everyone can access the site without satellites. However, maintaining the servers consumes a lot of power. John Lennon injured himself while trying to channel nuclear energy into the test, but even with his body still in pain, he still tried his best to run and complete Failnet. John Lennon is a true hero. Hearing this, he was completely bewildered. Moments later, Sang Hayu spoke again. Mr. Skelton, in this apocalyptic world, do you know how much power and influence an online community has? The current user base of Failnet is at least 10,000. And recently I just hacked into Viva Gallery's entryway. Do you know what that means? It means we can run attack comments on Viva Apocalypse. Hearing this, Park Caillou felt pathetic for having expected something more impressive would happen. Anyway, Sang Hayu truly possessed a demonic talent. In this post-apocalyptic context, to build such a force, to gather those sharing the same ideals. Suddenly, Secretary Kim panicked calling his name. John Lennon. Sang Hayu calmly reassured him he was fine. Park Caillou thought, sacrificing oneself to achieve a goal is not something everyone can do. Now Sang Hayu's life was hanging by a thread, but pursuing a goal to the end like this, perhaps was also a way to forget pain and reality. He pondered for a long while before speaking. Honestly, very impressive. Park Caillou suddenly paused, then in a low voice called, John Lennon. He seriously continued, I have an important question to say. Sang Hayu curiously turned to look at him. At the same time Park Caillou also spoke. Suppose I join Failnet, then can I use such a shiny nickname? Hearing this, he was dumbfounded for a long moment. Seeing Sang Hayu not respond, he pointed at the screen as a signal. Finally he understood and hesitantly replied, no, that is the administrator's privilege. The scene shifted again to that dangerous forest. By now Park Caillou had left Sang Hayu's basement and was in a state of dejection. Recalling what was said before, today thank you very much for coming. Here is the hunter equipment you requested. MK7 Harpoonizer. 1 shot per reload, you know how to use it, right? This is a piece of gear you often used when you were active, nicknamed the Hunter's Spear. Now Park Caillou chose a spear to pierce through the monster. Standing before him now was a giant creature, looking extremely dangerous. But Park Caillou not only was unafraid, but calmly told himself, time to hunt. The scene shifts. Voices suddenly resounded. I already heard Kyung Min say it. Since returning from the rift, this is the 3rd time you tried awakening. Kai Young sternly said, this life-risking experiment, you could really lose your life. Park Caillou, hearing that, just sat in silence without answering a word. After a long while, he finally spoke. On the contrary, I want to ask you a question, teacher. Memories suddenly surged back. At that time his hands were covered in wounds. Park Caillou fiercely demanded, do it again, but was stopped by Kyung Min. You idiot. Do you even know you've been unconscious for days? Have you lost your mind? Back to reality, Park Caillou calmly analyzed, but others risked their lives once, while I did it 3 times. He earnestly asked, but why is it still not working? Yet even so, I feel fulfilled. Only when I realized that no matter how hard I tried, it would still fail, could I accept and give up. Park Caillou then recalled the memories from when he was still on the battlefield. Then he gloomily said, now I don't even have the power of a hunter anymore, let alone the face to return to the battlefield. Just as he hesitantly said, teacher, you should give up too. Kai Young helplessly called his name, Park Caillou. I believe there will be a way, I will find it no matter what. Afraid that Park Caillou wouldn't believe, Kai Young firmly swore, I promise. No matter what happens later, never think about ending your life again. But the memories quickly ended after Min Hee spoke up. How did you know that? Whether yes or no, it already happened. Hearing her say that, Park Caillou was so furious that veins bulged all over his face. He then squeezed Min Hee's neck even tighter, silencing her for a moment. It seemed his rage had reached its peak. Seeing that, her subordinates threatened, let go, bastard, that's the Major General. As they spoke, they prepared to attack and restrain Park Caillou. But he had already anticipated their intentions. Without flinching, Park Kyu immediately kicked to block. His hand grabbed one man's shoulder to restrain him. With that done, he easily slammed him to the floor. One after another, they were defeated under his hands. With no other choice, the remaining one raised his gun to fire. But he was suddenly countered by Park Kyu. Another man then tried to rush in to fight to the death. Park Kyu tilted his head slightly to dodge the strike. Then he raised his knee to gently interact with the man's face. Teeth, lips, and blood instantly flew from his mouth. Thinking that wasn't enough, Park Kyu added another devastating blow. Seeing another appear, he muttered, "The last one." Park Kyu swiftly rushed in, grabbed the barrel of the man's gun, ready to strike again. But then a sharp voice rang out, "That's enough." The brief fight ended there. Less than a second later, he suddenly felt something was wrong. Before he could react, a huge explosion erupted. Cracks spread all over the walls and ceiling. He could do nothing but raise his sleeve to cover his nose. Then Park Kyu silently judged, an awakened power of this level, shockwave. Min-hee impatiently said, "Once you start listening, you have to hear it all." His fury seemed to return as Park Kyu roared angrily, How could you do something like this?" He shouted furiously. "Teacher Kai Young was once your teacher." She coldly replied, "Understand it clearly before acting that way. What if I told you it was the teacher himself who wanted to do this?" Park Kyu hadn't thought of that, so when he heard it, he was utterly shocked. "What?" Returning to a time before, the announcement rang out, "Recording begins." She asked again, "You have read through all the notes, right?" In the video, Kai Young calmly flipped through the paper in deep thought. Then he asked, "What is the success rate?" Min-hee replied, "Honestly, I cannot be certain of anything. The detailed principles of how awakened are formed have never been revealed. We are still in the stage of collecting data and testing hypotheses. If the experiment fails, we will proceed with humane death. Do you agree?" Kai Young firmly replied, "Agreed." Immediately after, Min-hee spoke. "Earlier the senior asked me why I could do this, right?" She proudly added, "We just simply did it." The scene shifted to another moment. Han Min's voice suddenly rang out, "Min-hee, we need more with power. Will you help me?" She hesitantly asked, "You mean I have to find more powered people for you?" Han Min innocently denied, "Of course, that's obvious. We both bear the title of saviors." He then said, "We must give everyone a chance for anyone to directly face this world." Then Han Min spoke darkly, "I think that is the true salvation." Min-hee returned from memory and said, "Even the senior saw it clearly. This is the place to recruit awakened and send them to Jeju Island. Thanks to that, this place is filled with desperate ones. People like Teacher Kai Young, as many as you want. There are even parents rushing to sell their children just to get to Jeju." Suddenly, an iron hand appeared in front of her eyes. At that moment, Min-hee was so shocked she couldn't speak. She whispered, "If only the senior hadn't chosen to leave back then, maybe it wouldn't have come to this." Hearing that, Park Kyu was dumbfounded, unable to say a word. A moment later, he slowly spoke, "What has Teacher Kai Young gone through?" Min-hee answered heavily. At that time, he was like a zombie. He reacted to everything around, but he neither ate nor slept and only repeated the same actions. The question was, what would happen to him? If he didn't wake up, he would be declared brain dead and then euthanized. I didn't want to leave him in such a drifting state. Kai Young's hands still tirelessly moved across the page. Suddenly a voice rang out, "Kyu, look, what do you think? A tactical weapon I designed myself. Attach a thermal spray canister to the axe, doubling its damage." Park Kyu bluntly remarked, "That sounds ridiculous, teacher." Kai Young bitterly replied, "Forget it. When I graduated, my instructor revealed training secrets instead of giving me a gift." He indifferently replied, "Oh, is that so?" A moment later, he spoke again. "Second Lieutenant Park discovered a new monster power, right? A promotion decision has been made. It should be called Lieutenant now. But even so, never forget, as long as you don't give up, everything has a way to be resolved. I hope you will become a hunter worthy of the new era." Who knows how much time passed? Park Caillou excitedly announced, representing the trainers, the exemplary call sign of the 13th class of our school. I have become a trainer, teacher. Back to reality. After hearing everything, he felt utterly dejected. Park Caillou stood beside Kai Young's desk, watching him sketch again and again. Finally, unable to bear it, he grabbed the pen. Then Park Caillou bent down and wrote something on his paper. Once done, he placed the pen on the desk. Just then Min-hee walked over. In the end, he was still a hero. Unlike someone who abandoned everything and hid away living alone. To continue his legacy, why don't you participate in the experiment? Or are you still wondering if you can redeem your mistake in just one successful trial? Standing before her sarcastic suggestion, Park Caillou said nothing. Moments later, he turned his back and left, with the bluntest reply possible, "You go do it if you want." Min-hee was stunned for a moment and then asked again, "Are you kidding me?" Park Caillou calmly replied, "I said if you like it then go do it yourself. No matter how much I want power, it's not going to be this way." Before turning away, he left one last sentence, "Not a chance I'll follow your will." Min-hee didn't understand, so she wondered afterwards, is it because of that guy's inferiority complex again? Park Caillou silently turned to look at her, then indifferently replied, "Think whatever you want." The scene shifted to another place. The sky was gloomy and gray, then rain poured down in torrents. The sound of hurried footsteps suddenly echoed in the air. Young-ho hastily asked, "Where are they now?" She immediately replied, "Not yet at the turn, run back another 50 meters. Da-jong paused for a beat, then suddenly shouted a warning, "Appa, ahead." In front of Young-ho at that moment was a follower of the Wan Liu Gui Zong cult. He didn't flinch at all but went straight ahead with a knife in his hand. Young-ho made one basic move, causing the man to not even have time to utter a sound before being sent to hell. Next, Da-jong suddenly spoke, "Move the body away. Then go straight into the building ahead to hide." Inside the building it was still pitch dark, the atmosphere extremely eerie. Young-ho dragged the body of the cult follower to hide with him. Footsteps rang out again, but not hurried, instead slow and deliberate. Yet because of their large numbers, the sound was still loud. Young-ho silently watched them slowly move into the building. He frowned tensely, his mind full of calculations. Suddenly his eyes flashed. It seemed the cult followers had sensed something. Not just one, but all of them. Their eyes shone brightly. Young-ho witnessed that scene and couldn't stop being tense. Lately on the internet, rumors had been spreading chaotically. One netizen asked, "Has anyone seen people dressed like that?" Others jumped in to reply, "What the heck, is this some cosplay trend lately? They're fanatics from China." Called the Wan Liu Gui Zong cult, you know it or not. The Wan Liu Gui Zong cult, a heretical sect that worshipped monsters as messengers of the gods. Because of their brutality, they killed people without hesitation. The cult had massacred believers cruelly. Even when still in China, they had already caused many conflicts. At that time, several hunters' vehicles were on the move. Suddenly, a cult follower jumped out to block the way. He strapped bombs around his body, then pressed the detonation button. A huge explosion immediately occurred, causing nearby vehicles to suffer casualties. Other hunters grieved deeply for their unlucky colleagues. Countless hunters had died, just because of their suicide bombings. Park Caillou thought to himself, "I thought they were wiped out back in China." Then suddenly a notification from Defender popped up. The message read, "Emergency situation, can you lend a hand?" He replied, "Whether to meet or not is for me to decide." Da-jiang then said, "This is different. With just the two of us, we can't handle it." Park Caillou curiously asked, "What exactly is going on?" She gloomily continued, "Do I even need to say?" Just now a group of people came to the park below the apartment. They're clearly no ordinary bunch. They're the Wan Liu Gui Zong cultists. It's been all over the internet these days. At that time, Da-jiang had told her brother, "Appa, these people," and he immediately said, "Let me go check it out." That day it was pouring heavily with rain. Young-ho ruthlessly killed one cult follower. The man immediately fell after taking a strike from Young-ho. Da Jiang explained that she thought only a few had appeared, so her brother went down to deal with it. Then, she screamed in panic, "Appa, watch out." Turns out there was an entire squad nearby. They were all cult followers. One by one they stood there, silently watching Young Ho deal with their comrade. The rain grew heavier and heavier, and their numbers increased more and more. Da Jiang was terrified, compared to the ones that had fled earlier. This number was suddenly overwhelming. Even her brother couldn't deal with them all, so he had to retreat. Her brother then said, "This isn't over yet, there's also an awakened one." Park Caillou fell silent for a long time upon hearing that. Then he asked, "What level?" "Level 3. Young Ho replied, "If it was that, would I even mention it?" He firmly stated, "At least level 5. Here it's just the two of us, we're no match for those fanatics. We should probably avoid confronting them." Over there, the blood of a cult follower flowed in streams mixed with the rain. Others had already been captured by the police. The fact was, in China awakened ones had been discovered, often appearing with this cult. Their eyes shone bright in the night, creating an eerie sight. But if it were only level 3, it would be understandable, up to level 5 though. Park Caillou thought, if those high-level awakened fanatics joined forces to seize his territory, then fighting them alone would be extremely dangerous. If only some hunter was willing to help. But who else is there? One was dead, that was Manager Sang Hoon. One had fled, that was Commissioner Da Ren. The last one was more dangerous than the enemy itself. Why do I always end up in such tangled relationships? Suddenly, Park Caillou thought of something. No, there's still someone. His eyes stared pensively ahead as if recalling something. Moments later, Park Caillou muttered, "When facing humanity, the strongest supporter." He looked again at Da Jiang's previous message and pondered for a long time. Finally, Park Caillou replied, "I'll come. You two just bring survival supplies and wait in front of the house." On his side, he calmly secured his weapon to his belt for defense. Once ready, Park Caillou got into his car and headed to the defender's home. Soon he arrived, calmly stepped out and looked around. In front of him now were Da Jiang and Young Ho waiting silently. They looked at him without saying a word. Not only that, this time Rebecca also joined. Park Caillou, full of spirit, declared, "From now on let's temporarily call this group Team Skeleton." Group Team Young Ho saw that and immediately asked, "Who's that woman?" Park Caillou promptly replied, "An acquaintance of mine, an excellent sharpshooter." He heard that and just muttered in acknowledgement. Soon after, the area map was spread out. The four of them gathered together to study it. A moment later Park Caillou finally spoke, explaining the tactics. In another development, the Wan Liu Gui Zong cultists were loitering on the streets. Each held a weapon in their hands, as if ready to strike at any moment. Suddenly a flash of light streaked across the dark night sky. He saw his comrade shot and shouted loudly, "Ambush." On the other side, Rebecca was aiming at other targets. At the same time Park Caillou's voice rang out. "Rebecca in charge of heavy. Eliminate anyone whose eyes are glowing. Provide sniper support right at base." Another cultist came into her scope. Rebecca didn't hesitate and immediately pulled the trigger. Her role at that time was the heavy. Below, the cultists panicked, telling each other, "Hide behind the building." One of them had barely said, "Flank the sniper from the corner," before being sent straight to paradise. Young Ho and Park Caillou on the other side were also working intensely. Their roles were assault. After shooting, they quickly moved to another spot. Park Caillou ordered, "Split up here, defender," and he immediately agreed. They were closing in and actively spreading their numbers. The cultists saw the two and shouted, "Chase them, kill them." Park Caillou wasn't stupid enough to stand still for them to take his life. He immediately gifted them with a few bullets. The cultists were instantly hit and fell dead. Seeing that, one of them furiously cursed, "These lunatics, flank them." But before finishing his words he was shoved down by another who snatched his gun. A barrage of bullets was fired, but none hit Park Caillou. Afterward he just clicked his tongue in disappointment. The cultist angrily said, "Missed the target." But right after, he activated his ability to locate him. Roads and paths appeared before his eyes. Soon after, he boasted, "I've sensed it." He ordered his comrades, set up an ambush, and they immediately got into position, thinking the plan would go smoothly, until he saw something. But his first reaction wasn't to dodge, but to wonder, what's this? It turned out Young Ho had secretly snuck in to plant bombs, then left while they were distracted. On his escape, 2 cultists blocked him, but both were sent to the afterlife. Witnessing this, the cultist was extremely shocked. What, these guys? Meanwhile, Park Caillou kept running as if nothing had happened. The drone above had recorded everything without anyone realizing. At this moment, the cultist was still puzzled. How are they moving and tracking the situation so accurately? From the rooftop, suddenly someone jumped down. Behind the cultist was Park Caillou with a sharp weapon. Da Jiang, acting as spotter, happily exclaimed, "Awesome. How about that skeleton? All thanks to Big Sis." On the other side, Park Caillou calmly said, "All of them are level 3 or below. No need to search. Just clear the rest inside the building." As soon as he finished, Young Ho immediately replied, "Understood." She then pouted, "Are you even listening to me?" Yet he seemed rather thrilled. Before long, Young Ho had reached the designated building. He decisively kicked the cultist guarding the door. At that moment another one appeared, taking him by surprise. Watching his actions, Young Ho grew confused. What the hell is this? Suddenly Park Caillou's earlier words echoed. What you must watch out for are level 4 awakened ones. They stand between level 3 and 5, so they can use shockwaves. Young Ho couldn't hold back and cut in. Wait. With disbelief on his face he asked, "You want me to lure them, me?" Back to reality. Young Ho was charging at him like lightning. The awakened one immediately used shockwaves to stop him. Young Ho looked somewhat surprised, but quickly calmed down and unzipped his jacket. By then his jacket was ablaze with flames. He charged straight at the awakened one and slammed the burning jacket over his head. Then Young Ho casually drew his knife. With one basic strike, the cultist couldn't react in time. But just as the blade neared his throat, an invisible force blocked it. At that moment Park Caillou's voice rang out again. Without shockwaves they're no different from level 3, nothing hard to deal with. But the question is, what if you count them? When the memory ended, that was also when the cultist counterattacked. Young Ho looked up and met his soulless eyes. But he no longer hesitated or feared, even swiftly countering. Young Ho steadied himself and muttered, "Then just take the hit." Gritting his teeth he could endure, then struck back. And just as he thought, the cultist took the blow. Seeing him fall, Young Ho let out an exclamation. Young Ho murmured in surprise, "It really worked." Right then, the glass behind him suddenly shattered. Young Ho stared back with sharp eyes. A sudden flash appeared in the dark night. Then other flashes followed one after another. Da Jiang saw this and began to feel uneasy. By then, for some reason the drones had all been destroyed. Below, a figure stood tall in the yard without fear. He even slowly advanced closer. Next Da Jiang anxiously relayed, Hey skeleton, all the drones are down," he quietly reasoned. Blackout, also known as power outage. The ability of those awakened is to sense electronic signals. Meanwhile, strange noises suddenly rang out. One cultist spoke, the sect's protector, the guardian. Young Ho saw and said, "They're all kneeling." With that he turned to look at Park Caillou, who remained unshaken. His earlier instructions echoed again. Most importantly, once a level 5 awakened or higher appears, everyone must fall back. Stop sniping. No one is allowed to interfere. Only then did Park Caillou slowly step forward. His hand still gripped his gun in case of mishaps. He had already declared firmly, "Let me personally handle him." Park Caillou spoke up. "No one is allowed to interfere. Let me personally handle him." Young Ho, annoyed, stopped him. "I'll sacrifice myself alone. I hate hearing words like that the most, you know." He cut him off and coldly asked back, "Who said sacrifice?" Then he continued, "It's only about prioritizing the safest way." At this moment, the Wan Liu Gui Zong cultist appeared. Light radiated from his body, dazzlingly bright. The surrounding people panicked instantly. Even Young-ho couldn't help but grimace. He wondered, can you really do it, skeleton? On the other side, Park Kyu calmly gripped the gun in his hand. The awakened before him used power like a monster, intensity and type limited depending on level. He aimed the gun at him, preparing to fire. He bluntly shot 3 rounds straight at him. The bullets flew close, but he still calmly raised his hand. The cultist waved his hand, revealing power from it. He swung his hand to block the bullets in front of him. Those bullets struck the barrier and were immediately bounced back toward Park Kyu. Young-ho, seeing that, clenched his teeth tensely. Hong Da-jiang was horrified and speechless. Rebecca lowered her gun and quickly shouted his name, skeleton. Park Kyu, shocked by that move, widened his eyes. Fortunately, he dodged all the bullets. The cultist broke into a cold sweat. Park Kyu quickly appeared behind him, drew the axe from his back, and swung it down to attack. The cultist panicked and hastily raised his hand to defend. His arm was slashed, blood trickling. He cried out in pain. I clearly used the reflection field. Park Kyu stepped back to maintain distance. His left hand struck, but hardly affected. He confidently said, intimidation. His eyes grew cold as he spoke. The bullets earlier were just a disguise. The reflection field, the ability to return all physical attacks, redirecting them back toward the attacker within range. That means if you deliberately attack the wrong way, then when it reflects, that strike is no longer effective. He continued, though the power of monsters and the awakened is always considered limitless, in reality, they still have limits in quantity and quality. When those limits are exceeded, time is required to recover. What we need to do is force them to consume power, then finish quickly, approaching the space where the field is paused during recovery. That is the true core combat method of an old school. The cultist furiously unleashed his technique. He attacked relentlessly but failed to hit. Park Kyu dodged every strike. In an instant, the cultist saw him suddenly appear right before him and panicked. Park Kyu coldly fired repeatedly. The cultist regained his senses and quickly evaded. The bullets again ricocheted back. Park Kyu swiftly dodged them all and charged forward to attack. He swung his axe down hard. The blade grazed the cultist, who clenched his teeth and countered. Park Kyu dodged and coldly glared at him. His eyes shifted behind, noticing the others being subdued. He thought, lucky I have support, so I don't need to worry about the cultists. Over there, Young-ho was coldly defeating them, Rebecca sniping from afar in support. Park Kyu again fired at the cultist. Struggling, the cultist thought, cursed technique, I can't win, I must restrict the field. His vision blurred as he saw the bullet approaching. He hastily raised a barrier, thinking, no, this time he's firing for real. At close range, the bullet ricocheted back at Park Kyu. The cultist screamed in his mind, die. He followed the bullet's rebound toward Park Kyu. But Park Kyu sidestepped, dodging it. The bullet grazing past his head, cutting a few strands of hair. Then he muttered, displacement. Another extreme facet of intimidation, only a hair's breadth apart. Even if studied, it couldn't always be applied effectively. The cultist, seeing Park Kyu swinging the axe, clenched his teeth and thought, this bastard, is he even human? If he only uses such forceful strikes, the field is bound to leak, without time to recover. Yet he still rushes at me so ferociously. Park Kyu leaped high, flipping over his head, then swung the axe straight down. The cultist turned in panic, raising his hand to counter, thinking, like a demon. The moon hung high above, illuminating the scene. The cultist was struck and staggered down. Seeing Park Kyu's determined face, he thought in horror, he's exhausting himself from blood loss already. No matter how abundant the field, it must deplete. Still, the ability to reflect strikes remained, no need to target his vital spots. Park Kyu lunged at him again. Just fire away, wait until the field begins to recharge, then his end will come. Park Kyu kept firing. The cultist tried to raise his hand to block, but still got hit. He turned, glaring at Park Kyu charging at him, smugly thinking, this is it. He gnashed his teeth, preparing to counter. Suddenly, he noticed the axe was gone from Park Kayu's hand. He cursed in his mind, "Damn dog, where's his weapon?" The axe had been thrown high into the air. It fell straight down toward his head. The cultist stared at it in shock. He braced his legs, shaking the ground, then raised his hand, expanding his field to block. His eyes narrowed, teeth grinding. Park Kyu raised his hand to catch the falling axe, coldly chopping down as he said, "Then use your field against me if you dare." His face darkened, eyes full of killing intent staring at him. The axe blade slashed past him. In that split second, Park Kyu recalled Kai Young's words, "Park Kyu, people like you in this world, only 100 are enough." The cultist was struck and collapsed. Park Kyu firmly thought, old school will never be left behind again. In Park Kyu's mind echoed the words, "Park Kyu, people like you in this world, only 100 are enough." There will no longer be a time when old school is left behind. The Wan Liu Guizong cultist struck down collapsed on the ground. He coldly watched the man lying there. The cultists behind, seeing this, were astonished. Then they panicked and scattered in chaos. Young Ho curiously asked, "Not going to deal with them?" And Park Kyu replied, "Their leader is dead. They're in a state of confusion. There's no need to lift a hand." He asked further, "Oh right, have you watched and learned yet?" Hearing that, Young Ho confusedly asked back, "Learn what?" Park Kyu lowered the axe in his hand and tucked the gun behind his back, then pointed at the one lying on the ground. Young Ho followed his gesture and replied, "That," and Park Kyu continued, "Watch closely and learn, so you'll have something to use later." Young Ho sighed in response, "Got it, just have to try to apply it." By then, everyone else had already left, leaving a quiet space in the night. Young Ho coldly looked at those lying on the ground, then glanced at Park Kyu's back. He spoke, breaking the silence, "This one isn't a protector. His mastery of power is too low. Maybe he just claimed or impersonated." Each sect may have slight differences in hierarchy, but not just anyone can climb to the position of protector. Sending a mediocre one here shows this area isn't their concern. There will be no reinforcements. After explaining, Park Kyu said to Young Ho, "Clean up the scene, then let's head out." Young Ho, still in a dazed thought, "I really fought someone like that." He recalled yesterday, thinking, if my judgment had been off a bit, I could have really died. He sighed, those old school veterans all have the same temperament. Before he finished, he noticed the open door nearby. Young Ho curiously approached the room, then turned back to pull Park Kyu along. Park Kyu followed expressionless, saying nothing. Suddenly something made him stop in surprise. Moments later, a car drove up to them. From it stepped down a cold young woman, Min Hee. Approaching Park Kyu, she spoke, "That day you turned away as if we'd never meet again." Hearing the familiar voice, he turned toward her. "Yet now you've come looking for me," she said as she advanced toward Park Kyu and Young Ho with elegance. "Who's that beside you?" she asked, and he introduced, "A junior needing my help with some things." Seeing Young Ho somewhat timid, he thought, scared already, no, terrified. It's his first time seeing a level 10 awakened. He thought no more, pushed open the door and said, "Take a look." All these capsules were gathered by those fanatics. He pointed at the capsules and continued, "There are still a few more storages like this. We also have some baseless evidence that they gather capsules to expand erosion zones. The number of capsules appearing in the city keeps increasing, all because of the fanatics. If this continues, the erosion will intensify. Isn't that reason enough for your army to intervene?" Min Hee looked at the items with interest, then spoke, "Such vague information from civilians, is it reliable? That's all you could think of, right?" Hearing this, Park Kyu stared at her, thinking, Wu Min Hee, her personality is terrifyingly domineering, fickle and irresponsible, taking joy in others' pain. He pondered, but still, then he said, "Why not, Min Hee?" In his thoughts, "I need her to protect my peaceful days, though I know someday it must end." He recalled his past life of farming, Sue and Rebecca laughing together, joyful moments gaming alone, posting about games on forums. Before that moment comes, he wanted to savor life as much as possible. Min-hee asked, "Are you really Senior Park?" He coldly countered, "What of it?" Seeing his doubtful expression, she quickly added, "Oh no, you've never known how to ask for help. Seeing yourself as the center of the universe, never listening to anyone, plus all the rumors about your temper." Hearing her harsh assessment, he hesitated to refute. "It's not that bad, right?" But in his mind he wondered, really that bad? Why has no one ever criticized me like this except Woo Min-hee? She continued, "Honestly, we're short on manpower, need to investigate the secrets behind the fanatics, but lacking both intelligence and combat agents." Park Kyu cut in, "There's a force backing them," she replied, "because Seoul's resettlement is so rapid. I suspect someone might be supporting them." Min-hee stepped closer. "So, Senior," then handed him a note, "let's cooperate. You can call me directly. Here's my ID number. Even if you wipe out the fanatics, it's only temporary. Erosion keeps spreading. You'll need me, I'll use you, and I'll also be ready to be used." Park Kyu accepted the note and stared blankly at it. She asked, "You've already passed the leisurely stockpiling stage, haven't you?" The corner of her lips curled into a smile. Seeing his silence, she added, "I'll clear these capsules. Consider it an advance payment." Suddenly, she felt sharp pain in her head. Sounds around her dulled. A joint slowly reconnected, then with a crack locked into place, aligning straight. They linked together in a line, then toppled to the ground. Min-hee's heart jolted, eyes wide in shock. Her arm dropped, the space in her eyes froze. Seeing her frozen like a statue, Park Kyu grew suspicious, then asked as she covered her mouth, "Woo Min-hee?" She trembled uncontrollably, drenched in sweat, and hastily told him, "Nothing, I'll call you later." Moments later, Young-ho carried things from the room to the car. He loaded the last box and reported, "All packed up." Da-jeong curiously asked, "What are you planning next?" He answered, "Probably move to the house I rented. This place isn't secure. And to prevent things like this, I've checked out a few more places, just bringing my computer and food money." Before leaving, Park Kyu turned and said to them, "Sorry for ruining your mood." Then he pointed his thumb and asked, "But who's that hanging over there?" Young-ho frowned. "Honestly, I want to say it's none of your business, but that'd be ungrateful." Park Kyu ignored the remark and bluntly asked, "So who is it?" Young-ho suddenly fell silent, froze, then looked at the hanging figure and said, "Our father. He's already dead, not worth discussing. I killed him, so what? Killed him, so